Okay, now this is interesting. It says estimate, then measure the height of the ball in inches. Now the problem with what I can do here is because I can zoom in, zoom out. You can't do that on your page, thank goodness. But if you were just to guess how many inches that ball, no, don't take your ruler out yet. Just estimate it. How many inches do you think, Sebastian? I think you're cheating there. I see a ruler. How many inches do you think that is tall? What do you think? 7, 4, 3.5. What else you got for me? 8. I think they're like 4 or 5 better. Go ahead and measure it now with your ruler. What do you get? What do you get in inches if you measure the height of that ball?
3.5. No. 3.5.
3.5. 3.5. Perfect. So it's 3.5 inches. Was it 3.5 or 3 3/4?
It's like in between 3.5 and 3. It's both the same. It's both 3.5 inches height and length. Yeah.
3.5?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good enough. What about if we estimate then measure the length of this pencil in centimeters? So again, before we take the rulers out, how many centimeters long do you think that pencil is from the tip of it to the eraser? 15 centimeters?
17.
17?
4.5. 4.5 centimeters.
I think it's more than 4.5 because it's long.
12.5.
Okay, grab those rulers. Let's figure it out.
12.5.
Okay, let's see. If you measure it with the rulers, is it 12.5 or is it something else? 12.5. Cool. So we don't use fractions when we talk about centimeters. We'll use decimals. So 12.5 centimeters. Okay. Good enough. We'll figure it out in just a second. So the key thing is when you're measuring, just remember, and we talked about this when we did the first 2 lessons, and the first 2 lessons told us how to measure with imperial, where there's inches involved, okay? And so I just actually, you know what I want to do is I actually want to bring up part of your assignment. So in your homework, I just want to direct you to this, okay? I want to direct you to this. So you're going to have to measure the length of these lines, and you're going to have to, so when you look at a ruler, and the ruler you're using, let's say, millimeters or meters or centimeters. So if you have something like, let's say this, I'm making this up, so don't think this is the answer. Let's say that this is the 2 centimeter mark, and let's say that this is the 3 centimeter mark. And let's just zoom in so we can kind of understand what's going on here. And let's say that the 2.5 mark would be right here, which I think is a decent estimate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if we're measuring the length of this line, we can see that the line ends right here. So if we're measuring this in millimeters, which it's asking us to do, we have to remember that 2 centimeters is how many millimeters?
10.
There's 10 millimeters in a centimeter, so if we've got 2 centimeters, that's how many millimeters? That's 20. So it's actually, even though there's a 2 here, think of it being a 20, and think of this being 30 in terms of millimeters. So how many millimeters would it be if it stopped right here? It'd be 26, because this is where the 25 is, and that's where 26 is. So when you're measuring this in millimeters, you're going to be think of there being a 0 on the end of the centimeters, and then just count up by 1s to figure out the length in millimeters. Now that's fairly straightforward, measuring it to the nearest millimeter. It's a little trickier with the inch, and let me explain how and why. So, like, let's look at 3B, which is, again, part of your assignment. And I'm just going to throw down a guess here. So, like, this is probably not right, so don't be, like, taking this one to the bank. Let's say that this is, like, 3 right here. And let's say that, I don't know, let's say that this is, like, 4 right here. Now, the inch, except between 0 and 1, between any other adjacent inch marks on your ruler, there's 16 divisions. Not 10 divisions like the centimeter, but 16 divisions. So I'm just going to put this one here, and then I'll put these ones here and here, and then I'm also going to put an additional 1, 2, 3 between each of the red ones. So what we have to understand is that there are 16 divisions. And when we write something here, it's actually asking us, and here's the kicker, you're going to have to round, and this is going to take a little bit of practice. You have to round to the nearest 1/4 inch. So if you look at your rulers, you should be able to see where the 1/4 inch marks are. Now I've kind of highlighted mine here so that it's clear, but that's a 1/4 inch, that's a 1/4 inch, that's a 1/4 inch, and that's a 1/4 inch. So when we figure out our answers, it's either going to be, like, we can see about what it's going to be, but it's going to be, is it closest to 3 inches, 3 1/4 inches, 3 1/2 inches, 3 3/4 inches, or 4 inches. Now, in this case, it is going to be between 3 1/2 and 3 3/4. I'm going to write that down. It's going to be between 3 1/2 and 3 3/4. Now, because it ends up right here, which one is it closer to? 3 1/2 or 3 3/4? 3 3/4. So the answer to this is going to be 3 3/4 of an inch. So even though your ruler will go to the 16th of an inch, when you do number 3 on your homework, or anytime you're asked to measure with inches, and it tells you that you have to round to the nearest 1/4 inch, then you have to basically look at any adjacent between 3 and 4, and you have to think, okay, this is where a 1/4 is, this is where 2/4 or a 1/2 is, this is where 3/4 is, and this is where 4 full inches is. Where does this end get closest to? And it is 3 3/4 of an inch. So when you give your answer, it needs to be as a fraction, because when we measure things in imperial, we have to report our measurements as fractions, unless it's closest to 3 or 4 on the nose. Okay? Now, with that said, we're going to get back to the trundle wheel. Yes, I need 3 volunteers. I've got 1, 2, and anyone else? 3, cool. I'm going to give you a trundle wheel, and here's how it's going to work. I'm going to get you to take it, and I'm going to get you to walk to the library. You're going to walk to the library as much of in a straight line as possible. So, like, if you're going to the library, you can't be doing this with your trundle wheel. Whee! That's not really going to give you an accurate measurement of the distance between here and the library. What you need to do is you need to do more like this. And of course, hallways kind of curve and stuff, so you can't be perfect, but that's kind of what you got to do. And every time it clicks, it's 1 meter. So what I need you to do is count the number of clicks from here to the library. And what we'll do is we'll sit here and wait while I give out the homework for the 3 people that have volunteered to go and tell me how many times it clicks, and then we'll answer it. Okay, does anybody want to give me an estimate as to what you think the answer might be? How many meters do you think it's going to be? 150?
25.
25, 150. 2 completely different answers. 63. Okay. what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the trundle wheels to the 3 volunteers, and you're going to go and you're going to tell me what you get. But it's cool that we see that these estimates, while they're estimates, not really all that close. We see that in practice, the distance is 91 meters from here to the library.